In the spring of 1944, the skies over Europe were no longer Germany's domain. The Luftwaffe, once the most feared air force on Earth, was now bleeding aircraft faster than it could replace them. Every morning, American bombers appeared on the horizon, thousands of them, and every evening, fewer German planes returned home. Still, deep inside the Reich, many believed German engineering would turn the tide again, that one more miracle weapon would restore air superiority. Then, one morning near Hanover, something unexpected happened. A strange aircraft fell from the clouds. It wasn't German, and it didn't look like any Spitfire or P-47 the mechanics had seen before. Its lines were too clean. Its wings seemed impossibly thin. When the guards approached, they found the pilot gone. He'd bailed out, but the plane was mostly intact. The men circled it, curious and cautious. On the side, painted in silver and olive drab, were the faint, fading letters, P-51 Mustang. At first, they laughed. One mechanic joked, "So this is the American toy giving us trouble?" Another replied, "It looks too light. It'll fall apart in a real dogfight." The commanding officer ordered it to be hauled to an airfield near Rechlin, the Luftwaffe's secret testing base. Within hours, the captured Mustang sat inside a hangar usually reserved for German prototypes. The inspection began the next morning. The German engineers expected rough welding, cheap materials, perhaps some clever shortcuts typical of American mass production. But as they removed the cowling and examined the heart of the machine, the laughter faded. Inside sat a Packard-built Merlin engine, an American licensed version of Britain's Rolls-Royce design. They had seen the Merlin before in Spitfires. But this was different. The fit was perfect, the installation compact. Every inch of space was used efficiently. One engineer quietly muttered, "They've perfected it." The Mustang was not heavy like the Me-109 or the FW-190. It was balanced, simple yet sophisticated. Its laminar-flow wings looked almost too thin to work, but their surface was flawless, smoother than anything German factories were producing in 1944. The wings weren't just aerodynamic, they were revolutionary. Then they found the real secret. Under the fuselage, running from nose to tail, was a massive internal fuel system, self-sealing tanks, smartly placed for balance, and plumbed for external drop tanks that could be jettisoned mid-flight. The German officers were stunned. "This aircraft," one of them said, "can escort bombers to Berlin and back again." That realization sent a chill through the room. For years, German pilots had relied on short-range interceptors to shoot down bombers. They'd strike fast, retreat, refuel, and strike again. The Allies' problem was always distance. Fighter escorts couldn't protect bombers beyond certain limits. But this plane changed everything. The Luftwaffe mechanics began taking measurements. The fuel capacity was staggering, over 400 gallons with drop tanks. The range? More than 1,600 kilometers one way. One engineer stared at the numbers in disbelief. He said, "It can fly from England to Berlin, escort bombers the whole way, and still return." For the Luftwaffe, that wasn't just impressive, it was devastating. Word spread quietly among senior staff. Colonel Werner Baumbach, a bomber ace turned strategist, visited the airfield to see the aircraft himself. "It's beautiful," he said reluctantly, running his hand along the fuselage. "If they can build these in numbers, we are finished." Meanwhile, German intelligence officers began searching for more information. How many did the Americans have? Where were they built? The answers came back quickly. and they were worse than anyone imagined. By early 1944, American factories were producing more than 300 Mustangs every month. Entire squadrons were appearing over Europe. Pilots reported seeing the silver fighters from horizon to horizon. They were fast, nearly 440 miles per hour at altitude, and could outclimb or outturn nearly anything Germany had left. At Rechlin, Luftwaffe test pilot Hans-Werner Lurch was ordered to fly the captured Mustang. His report was simple but haunting. This aircraft has no weaknesses. He noted its stability, its speed, and the effortless control it gave its pilot. He wrote, "It is forgiving. It allows ordinary men to fly like experts." That statement carried more weight than anyone realized. Germany's aircraft by 1944 were becoming monsters of complexity. The Me-262 jet was fast, but fragile. The Me-163 rocket plane could kill its own pilot if handled wrong. The FW-190D and TA-152 were engineering marvels, but they demanded the best pilots. And by then, most of them were gone. The P-51, by contrast, was built to be flown by thousands of men, not a handful of elites. When Allied bombers appeared again the following week, escorted by long columns of Mustangs, the effect on German morale was brutal. Pilots returning from missions spoke of silver fighters everywhere, diving, climbing, attacking with impossible range. One Me-109 pilot recalled after the war, "They were always there, even over Berlin. Even when we thought they had turned back, they were there." In Berlin, Luftwaffe command began quietly acknowledging what the mechanics had already realized. This one airplane had undone years of German air doctrine. It was fast enough to fight, light enough to stay airborne for hours, and cheap enough to build by the thousands. And the worst part? America was just getting started. While Germany struggled to produce a few hundred aircraft a month, the United States was turning out more than 96,000 planes per year. The Luftwaffe's defeat wasn't just happening in the skies, it was happening on the assembly lines. By the time the captured Mustang was fully disassembled and cataloged, the engineers didn't laugh anymore. Some even admitted their envy. One officer wrote in his diary, "This is what an industrial superpower looks like. We build art, they build victory." That captured Mustang was later destroyed in an air raid, but its memory lingered in the minds of those who studied it. A sleek, silver reminder that Germany's greatest enemy wasn't just American pilots, it was American production. And as 1944 turned into 1945, that truth would haunt the Luftwaffe every time a new formation of bombers appeared. Because now, the bombers were never alone. By the summer of 1944, the Mustang was everywhere. From the beaches of Normandy to the factories deep inside Germany, its silver wings haunted the skies. Luftwaffe radar operators began calling them ghosts, because no matter where they looked, the P-51 was already there, high above, diving out of the sun, or waiting at the edge of the clouds. The German High Command tried to convince itself it was just another Allied fad, a temporary advantage that could be countered. But their own test pilots knew better. The captured Mustang at Rechlin had told them the truth. This wasn't just a plane. It was a symbol of a new kind of war, one fought not by aces, but by industry. The Luftwaffe's elite pilots, the men who had once ruled the air over Europe, now faced something they could not outfly: numbers. Endless, efficient, deadly numbers. For every Messerschmitt built in 1944, America built 12 Mustangs. For every drop of aviation fuel Germany struggled to refine, the United States produced a river of it.
German pilots noticed something else, something that cut even deeper. The Mustang pilots weren't flying for glory. They flew with calm precision, methodically protecting bombers, cutting off enemy fighters, and disengaging without waste. To the Luftwaffe, it was terrifying. An air force that fought without emotion, powered by a machine that never tired. Adolf Galland, the legendary German general of fighters, later admitted that the P-51 was the best all-around fighter of the war. Coming from a man who once boasted that no American aircraft could touch his MiG-109, that was no small confession. When the Mustangs appeared, we knew the end had come, he wrote. At the front lines, the difference was obvious. Allied bomber crews who once dreaded crossing into German airspace now felt the odds shifting. They could look out of their cockpit windows and see Mustangs flying beside them at 30,000 feet, sometimes for 8 hours straight. The same pilots who once prayed to survive one more mission were now escorted all the way home. Meanwhile, inside Germany, morale was crumbling. Factory workers began whispering about the new American fighter that never runs out of fuel. Pilots joked darkly that they could see P-51s even in their sleep. Propaganda films tried to claim the Me-262 jet would save them, but even that miracle weapon couldn't keep up with the reality that the Americans now owned the skies. The Mustang's secret wasn't just the Merlin engine or its perfect design. It was what it represented: teamwork, innovation, and industrial unity. Every rivet, every hose, every spark plug had been built by a system designed for one purpose: efficiency. Germany's engineers, brilliant as they were, worked in chaos. Dozens of competing designs, constant shortages, political interference, genius buried under bureaucracy. America's engineers, meanwhile, worked with one voice, one plan, one goal: build faster, simpler, stronger. When the Luftwaffe's technical officers submitted their final reports on the captured Mustang, they wrote something that Hitler refused to read. It said bluntly, "We cannot match this aircraft." It compared German and American production methods line by line. Germany hand-built perfection, America mass-produced power. And power, not perfection, was winning the war. By late 1944, Allied bombers were flattening synthetic fuel plants, rail networks, and airfields. Every day, fewer German fighters took off and more P-51s arrived to make sure they never returned. The balance was gone. The Luftwaffe, once the pride of the Reich, had become a ghost of its former self. Even when Germany introduced the Me-262 jet, the fastest plane in the world, it was too late. The jets had no fuel, no spare parts, and no safe runways. Mustangs hunted them during takeoff, cutting them down before they could climb. The hunters had become the hunted. In April 1945, as American tanks rolled across the Rhine, the last surviving Mustang squadrons flew above them, watching over the advance. Below, the German countryside lay in ruins. Cities were silent. The skies, once full of smoke and fire, now belonged to the silver wings that once had been laughed at in a hangar near Hanover. After the war, when Allied intelligence debriefed captured German engineers, one question kept coming up. What did you think of the Mustang? The answers were strikingly similar. One Luftwaffe colonel said, "We were proud of our machines, but the Mustangs showed us something we didn't understand. Efficiency is the highest form of genius." Another simply said, "We were fighting the wrong war. They had factories, we had pride." In the years that followed, many of those same engineers helped rebuild West Germany. And when they designed their first post-war aircraft, they remembered the Mustang, its simplicity, its practicality, its reliability. The war had destroyed their country, but it had also taught them something about humility and progress. The very machine they once mocked had become their teacher. For America, the P-51 Mustang became more than a weapon. It became a symbol of what unity, creativity, and courage could achieve. General James Doolittle once said, "The Mustang made the Army Air Forces the greatest fighting force in the world." He wasn't exaggerating. The Mustang didn't just win air battles, it won belief. It showed that victory didn't belong to the loudest, the boldest, or even the bravest, but to the most prepared. And somewhere on a forgotten airfield where German mechanics once stood around a strange silver plane, the echo of that truth still lingers, a whisper of awe and disbelief at the aircraft that changed the skies forever.